Good morning, everybody. My name is Burcu. I'm the Technician Commitment Manager at the Institute. Welcome to our very first EDI and Technician Commitment joint talk. And I'm very excited today to host Carole today. Before I do all the introductions about Carole, I would like to mention a few things. First of all, this talk is open to our Research Institute Technician Group members as well, not only for Sanger staff. So we welcome all of you for the participants. And I would like to mention a few technical details. Now we are all very much aware about Zoom talks. As I mentioned, the talk will be recorded. May I ask you to mute your microphones, please, which always is handy. And we will have a question and answer session at the end of the talk. And please, can you send your your questions during talk via chat to me directly or to the group? That would be great. I think before I give word to Carole, I would like to introduce her first. So Carole is the chair of John Innes Center, Inclusivity and Diversity Committee. Also, she is the head of the Directorate. After graduating with a biochemistry degree from the University of Manchester, Carole joined the John Innes Center as a PhD student and has experience of working as a postdoc, a research assistant, and in scientific administration. As the head of the John Innes Center Directorate, as I mentioned. Carole played an instrumental role in John Innes Center, being the first research institute to be awarded a Silver Athena SWAN award, and more recently, the first independent institution to be awarded a Gold Athena SWAN. What a great achievement indeed. Her seminar will focus on the interventions put in place at the John Innes Center to address equal opportunities. Without further ado, I will leave the word to Carole. Welcome, Carole.
Thank you for that nice introduction. So today, as you just heard, I'm going to be telling you about the equality and diversity work that we have carried out at the John Innes Center to help towards advancing equal opportunities. I'll give a brief introduction to myself and then about the JIC. And then I will talk very briefly about the data that we've collected. It's mainly focused on gender, but I will try and expand that a little. And then give you some information around the initiatives that we've put in place that we think are contributing towards producing an inclusive research culture. And then towards the end of the talk, I'll talk about some of our key beacon activities where we share best practice and also importantly what we've learned from others. And then finish up on giving you an idea of what I think the impact has been of Athena SWAN and the technicians' commitment at JIC and what our future plans are. Oh, hang on. So a little bit about me. So as you just heard, I did my degree in Manchester and then I've been at the John Innes Institute since I was a PhD student. I've worked on a variety of projects, which are shown in the image here, and in a variety of roles. And I've been in my current role as head of Directorate since 2008. And then as part of that role, I chair the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee at JIC. So I'm part of a dual career family. And in parallel with my scientific career, I've had 3 children who are now all grown up and left home, so I'm not having to cope with the trauma of having to do homeschooling like some of you probably are. My background, as you'll have gathered, is a scientific one, so I am not an equality and diversity professional. However, my experiences at JIC of demands of the different roles, alongside juggling childcare and work and striking a good work-life balance helps inform the EDI activity at JIC. So the John Innes Institute, which I'll often refer to as JIC, is located at the end of the A11 in East Anglia. We're co-located with a few other research institutes, including the Earlham Institute, the Quadram Institute, the Sainsbury Lab, and then we're nearby to the University of East Anglia, which is our local university, and we're next door to the Norfolk and Norwich University Hospital. And together, these institutions form the Norwich Research Park. So this is the area that the John Innes Centre occupies. And we are funded mainly through UKRI, through the BBSRC Research Council. So our area of expertise is in plant and microbial science, and we're an international centre of excellence for plant and microbial science. And together with the Sainsbury Lab in Norwich, we have just launched our new vision called Healthy Plants, Healthy People, Healthy Planet. There's more information on that on our website if you're interested. And this vision is rooted in the science that we undertake within our 4 strategic programmes, which are Molecules from Nature, Designing Future Wheat, Genes in the Environment, and Plant Health. And it's the Plant Health Strategic Programme where we work very closely with the Sainsbury Lab. An important part of our mission and vision is to train scientists and the technicians of the future. And we do this in a variety of ways, mainly through our PhD programs. So we are the only research institute to lead a doctoral training partnership. And this is a partnership which goes across the Norwich Research Park. And then last year we were awarded a PhD program from Wellbeing called Athena. And again, that's across institute PhD program. So you'll all be aware that Athena SWAN was established in 2005, and it was established to look at the barriers facing women in STEM. And research institutes at that time were not eligible to take part in this charter. And it wasn't until 2013 when the Royal Society and the BBSRC joined forces and ran a research institute pilot. And that is a pilot that we took part in. So as you heard earlier, in 2013 we were awarded an Athena SWAN Silver Award. And the reason we went straight to silver was because we already had a track record in equality and diversity activity, and were able to show some of the impacts that some of these things we put in place had. But importantly for us, we took a slightly different approach to Athena SWAN to what was expected, in that we didn't restrict it just to our academic staff. We decided that, you know, we're such a small institution, we're about 400 people, that to exclude our our research and support staff, so that would be your technical staff or the professional and support staff at universities, would be to exclude half of the institute. And we recognised very early on that without the expertise of the technical support staff, the academic staff would not be able to do their job. So in order for the institute to embrace Athena SWAN as a vehicle to move forward our equality and diversity activities, we decided that either everybody was going to be included or we weren't going to do it. So we include everybody. And then in 2015, the ECU, or Advanced HE, decided to review the Athena SWAN Charter and expand it. And it morphed from being about women in science and the barriers that they're experiencing to being about gender equity. And it included the arts and humanities as well as STEM. And also, as part of this review, professional and support staff, so your technical staff or our research and support staff, became an integral part of the Charter. So in 2017, we were awarded a Gold Award. So as you heard, we're the first independent institution to be awarded a Gold Award. One of our sister research institutes that's associated with the Edinburgh University, they were also awarded a departmental Gold Award. And this recognised our embedding of our equality and diversity activity, and recognised that we had managed to effect a cultural change within the research organisation. So as I said, our technician community were an integral part of the Athena SWAN programme and our equality and diversity activity. So it was a no-brainer really to become a signatory of the Technicians' Commitment, and this happened in 2017. The Technicians' Commitment, as you know, is all about raising the visibility of the staff, of this group of staff, making sure they're recognised for what they do, making sure their career development opportunities are there, and making sure there's some sustainability in careers. And it's really important to have a stable community, because this community is required to make, in our case, make the Institute actually work. So on becoming a signatory, we had to undergo a self-assessment exercise in 2018 and put forward an action plan for the next 2 years. So this will be renewed at the end of the year. And Claire Stevenson, who I think is in the audience, is the lead for this particular charter that we're involved in. And some of the feedback we received was how they recognised that, you know, we've been doing this work for a long time, and now was the time to start sharing best practice within the community. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, sharing best practice, a bit later on. But first, before I go on to in more detail into our data, I just wanted to make you aware of a recent roadmap that was published last week from the government, the UK Research and Development Roadmap. Within this roadmap, they are pledging to develop a new research and development, people and culture strategy. It's really clear that the importance of research culture and the ability to attract, retain and develop talented, diverse people in science is moving up the government's agenda. I've selected these 3 statements from that document where they're recognising that it's important to increase the attractiveness and sustainability of careers through research and development workforce. And they're realising that, you know, it's more holistic than just researchers. It includes technicians and innovators, entrepreneurs, practitioners. And they're also recognising that, as we've known for quite a long time, that we need to dismantle any barriers that are generating inequalities in the system, and that we need to value and nurture and support everybody and build on those diverse experiences and views. So there is recognition that in order to flourish, for research and development to flourish, is that we need to be embracing diversity and making sure that people can reach their full potential. So I feel with the technicians' commitment and the activity associated with Athena SWAN, which we've shown at the Institute, that where initiatives that we've set up to deal with a particular problem for a particular group of people have actually benefited everybody. So I feel with all these things in place, we're in a good place to be able to map on and hopefully influence this new people and culture strategy. So I know that UKRI are involved in working with the government to work this up. So how do we go about equality, diversity, inclusion at JIC? So first of all, we are quite small, as I said. We're about 400 staff and another 100 students. We don't have any dedicated equality and diversity professionals. So we're really relying on people's commitment, enthusiasm and passion to drive through any changes that we want. So we have an Inclusivity and Diversity Committee, which I chair. The membership of this committee changes on a regular basis, which is really good because it keeps the ideas fresh and we get different points of view. It's made up of sort of 3 components. We have our equality and diversity champions, and these would include our mental health champions, our race champion, our parent and carer champion, and so on. And then we have representatives from our staff and student cohorts, so that would be our research and support staff voice, our student voice, our postdoc voice, and faculty. And then we have a range of people who enable the activities to take place. So I put myself in that category, along with our HR manager, our learning and development people, and people from the Graduate Studies Office. Over the years, the balance of this committee has changed dramatically. Originally, when it was very much focused on Athena SWAN, when we started on that journey, the view was very much within the Institute that, oh, it's a woman's thing, and it was very difficult to get a good mix of people on the committee. So we were very much female dominated then, whereas now it's so much better and people volunteer to come on the committee, which is really great. And most importantly, we have the director on the committee. So I work very close with the director, and Dale is so his name is Dale Sanders. He's been at the Institute since 2010. He is absolutely behind equality and diversity at JIC. And having him on the committee means that things get done very quickly. And if it needs a bit of money, then we can facilitate that very quickly. So I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about the data. It's quite hard to keep the data quite small because you spend an inordinate amount of time analysing the data, and yet that's really just a small part of this whole agenda. So if we look at the Institute as a whole, what I'm showing here, just if I can, if we look at the Institute, I was trying to find the pointer, I can't find it, but it doesn't matter. If we look at the Institute as a whole, what I'm showing here is that the green bar represents the males, the yellow, the females, the yellow bar represents the males, the red is the benchmarking, and then the line represents the head count. And I've indicated years 2011 when we first started, which is the first data point for our silver application, 2013 when we got silver, 2016, which is the data we used for gold, and then 2019. And you can see that as a whole, the Institute has expanded. We had a period of expansion between 2013 to 2016, and yet we've managed to keep the gender balance overall stable around 50%. If we break that down into cohorts, looking at the research and support staff first, the gender balance has remained relatively stable around 55% women. That's a better balance than we see with the HESA benchmarking data for professional and support staff. And then if we look at our postdocs, you'll notice straight away that this is where the Institute expansion came, and this was due to a dramatic increase in the number of postdocs. And in 2013, when we had our silver, you can see that the gender balance was just under 40%. So this was our leaky pipeline at that point. We're now around 48%, and that seems to be sort of relatively stable over the period that we've shown. The area that's more difficult is our research leaders or our group leaders. So these are the more independent senior academics. And when I first had a look at this data, I mean, the great thing is that it is improving. We've gone from 23% to 36% women. I was a bit disappointed because I was under the impression from thinking about the recruitment that we had that actually it was much better than that. And then when I thought very hard about the recruitment, I realised that most of the recruitment was into the early career stage of a group leader role. And so I thought perhaps we could have a look at an intersectional analysis of the data and look at it by age and by gender. So that's what I did. And that revealed something quite different. So what I've tried to show here are 3 years, 2013, 16 and 19. And then I've split it by gender and age and used 40 years old as the cutoff. So I've looked at all those under 40 and all those under 40 and had a look under 40 and over 40, and then had a look to see what the gender balance is. And you can see that we've managed to attract women into this early career stage quite successfully. And we're now around about 58% women in the under 40s, which would represent our independent fellows and our tenure track group leaders. So now our leaky pipeline is at the more sort of the mid-career group leader. Okay, so that was one section of the data that we were looking at, and then the other, which looks pretty positive, I'm pleased to say. However, when we look at ethnicity, it's a completely different story. So this is an area where JRC currently is not very good, and it's an area where we are actually beginning to hone in and focus on. And yesterday we had a Inclusivity and Diversity Committee that was completely dedicated to looking at racial equality. So if we look at our staff, what I've tried to do here is split it in terms of gender and breaking down ethnicity into white and BME. And I recognise that BME, Black and Minority ethnic backgrounds, is not very helpful because I understand and I realise that different ethnic minorities have faced different barriers. But for the purpose of this talk, I'm just going to refer to them as BME or BAME. So you can see that our UK national staff ethnicity is really poor. This group of staff makes up, or the majority of this group of staff are our research and support staff. When you look at our international staff, where the majority of our staff are our postdocs, you can see that the ethnicity is more diverse, but it's still not great. And then when I've looked at the ethnic diversity of our UK PhD students, that's really poor as well. So this is an area that we are going to focus on. So as I say, it's very easy to get hooked on the data, but what is really important is that it's not just about the data, and it's about the culture. So what I want to do now is to move on to some of the things that we've done that have enabled us to generate an inclusive culture at JIC. So I would say that the key to our success, or to what I think is our success, is the fact that we have the voices, which are a fantastic mechanism for engaging with staff and students across the institute. So we have 3 voices, and then we have faculty. So the people I'm showing here are the current chairs of those voices. So we have the student voice, the research and support staff voice, and the postdoc voice, and they all have representation on the Inclusivity and Diversity Committee, and they have a representation on other committees within JIC as well. And they're used as a way of getting people together to form focus groups. So we've had focus groups around career development and training. Whenever we do a staff survey, we end up with a action planning group, and they're involved in that. They've helped us review the performance review system to make sure that it's fit for purpose. And really importantly, at this time, when we went into lockdown on the 24th of March, we assembled a COVID business continuity group, and they have representation on there. And that has been absolutely fantastic, because it's meant that we've been able to unwind from complete lockdown to a situation where we are now, where some people are beginning to be able to go back to work, and we've been able to address concerns from across the organisation rather than sort of hazarding a guess as to what the concerns are. So some of the foundations, if you like, that we've put in place are generating a system where we can collect data efficiently. That sounds very blasé, but it was absolutely impossible when we set off on our Athena SWAN journey, for instance. But now we have easily accessible data that can be analysed any which way you want. We collect and retain our recruitment data, so we have a really good insight into where we are along our EDI journey. We have mandatory training in place, as you would expect, for equality and diversity, bullying and harassment awareness training, and we have modules not only for everybody, but also for line managers. We have mandatory recruitment and selection training now, which has unconscious bias training embedded. We make sure that these modules are reviewed on a regular basis and ensure that they're up to date. And within the recruitment and selection training, we have this great video about recruitment bias in research institutes, which really chimes actually. We've run a focus group around identifying what our values are, so we call these our personal attributes, and you can see them listed on the slide there. These are embedded within the appraisal system, within our recruitment system. All of our equality and diversity and unconscious bias information is embedded where it's relevant into other training programs, so people are hearing what's required from through a variety of different mechanisms. So another thing we've done is we've reviewed the imagery within our organisation, and it's amazing how blind you become to what's on the walls, and it's not until people start pointing it out. And when we decided we were going to do this, the sort of imagery we had on the wall was this, and these are very eminent scientists, and they're basically paintings of scientists who have come to JIC and talked at our Friday seminar named series. Yes, we have a series of seminars which are named after famous scientists, and these were people who were invited to talk to those. And what this established was, first of all, it's not very reflective of the population within JIC, but also it highlighted the fact that the gender balance of our Friday seminar speaker series wasn't very good either. So that has been addressed. And then we ran a project asking for people to put themselves forward to have photographs taken for us to put around the institute. So now the imagery looks more like this, and it basically reflects not only the diversity of our staff, but also the diversity of the roles within the John Innes. We've had several working groups, so this is another project that's happened and it's ongoing, and that's about supporting our LGBT+ community. We're a member of Stonewall's Diversity Champion programme, and we have a Stonewall Diversity Champion. And this group basically has put together some initiatives that some of them were easy wins, And they include things like changing your intranet profile so you can actually put your pronouns on there if you want to, encouraging people to put pronouns on their electronic signatures, on their emails, making sure that the equal opportunity monitoring form gives you a non-binary option, reviewing policies. For instance, our working overseas guidance document, when looking at it through an LGBT plus lens, made us realise that actually it's not very inclusive, and it needed to be more explicit. So now the risk assessment explicitly asks whether or not you've taken into consideration the local culture of the country that you're going to, and whether the risks associated with that have been reviewed. And then, of course, we have the rainbow lanyards, but this isn't just, you're not just given a rainbow lanyard, you're given a piece of paper that tells you, it's written here, that you're pledging to support that community and you'll challenge any discriminatory behaviour. So it's making people think a little bit. Another area where we've had a lot of activity is around lowering the barriers for carers. It was only in 2018 that we actually had a nursery, something that's been required for a long, long time. We didn't have the money to build one ourselves. However, what we did do is we sort of thought a little bit outside the box and decided that we would lobby the other institutes locally and find out what the demand was, and then see if we could put together a business case for, there's a commercial arm on the Norwich Research Park who was looking to attract a nursery to the park, so we provided them with the evidence that they could use to make the park look attractive, and that was successful, and that opened in 2018. The thing we get now is that, you know, people at the institutes think that that is an institute nursery, and it's not. So although it's not subsidised, what does tend to happen is that the institutes are given first shout at any spaces, and then after that it gets opened up to the wider Norwich Research Park. I'm not going to go through everything on this slide. I just wanted to highlight the Stop the Tenure Clock initiative that we put in place. So that's an example of an initiative that has been modified, because originally it was just open to female tenure track group leaders who had had babies, obviously, because I mean, the females had the baby. And then what they were given was a year extension to their tenure clock if they wanted it, plus additional resource to help plug the gap of productivity. And what we realised was that's all very well and good, and it works very well. However, there were some tenure track group leaders who had people within their groups that were going on maternity leave, and that was impacting on the overall group's productivity. So the scheme was expanded to include tenure track group leaders who had people within their group that were on maternity leave. So that makes it a bit more inclusive. It means that it was open to all tenure track group leaders. And then we've also committed to giving postdocs, who tend to be on fixed term contracts, a reassurance that they will have at least 6 months paid work at the end, when they return from parental leave. This gives them the opportunity to finish off papers, get themselves back in the right mindset for looking for a new job. And that's gone down really well. Another area of activity that we've been focusing on recently, and this started last year, is on wellbeing and mental health. It was recognised that there was a lot of resources on the intranet, but it was quite hard to find them. So this group got together and put all the information in one place, and now we have a portal that allows easy access to the information, and it's basically a one-stop shop. We've been having regular time to talk events, which have been very popular. These have been rotated around the institute, so it's not always the same people who attend. These obviously have stopped during the current pandemic. However, we're thinking about restarting those virtually. And then we have mental health trained first aiders. We're in the process of training those when all of this happens, so that will carry on when we move on. And all this activity that's been going on is promoted on a regular basis as within staff newsletters and things at the moment. We have mentoring, and we have an internal mentoring pool. These are mentors from across the site, and it includes technical staff as well as researchers, as well as group leaders, and I think there's some postdocs in there as well. And this is open to everybody. And there's different types of mentoring. You know, you can just just wanting to talk over things with somebody, getting some advice on how to manage difficult conversations, or there's mentoring focused around funding, writing fellowships, having some mentoring in terms of interview technique with our independent fellows who apply for ERC grants or Royal Society grants or the Future Leader fellowships. They get a mock interview, for instance, and it turns out that the mock interview at JIC is much harder than the actual interview. So people are really well prepared for those. We have career development type mentoring. We have mentoring associated with professional registration with the Science Council. So some of our technical support staff, they have this professional registration, and they mentor not only people internally, but people externally who are wanting to apply for this. And then as we're quite small, we're very agile and we can do bespoke mentoring. So it was recognised by Diane Saunders, who I'm showing you here, who's a group leader in the Designing Future Wheat strategic programme. It was recognised that there is a lack of women in leadership positions in the wheat research area. And so this bespoke mentoring was set up, this Women in Wheat mentoring, to encourage women to continue their academic career in wheat. And it works on 2 levels. There's some group mentoring around things like interview performance, writing your CV, what's your elevator pitch, finding your niche, all these types of things, to more sort of one-to-one mentoring with somebody who's actually in the area. And then also given the opportunity to meet other women who are in this area. And that programme started at JIC, and now it's been rolled out to the other partners within the Designing Future Wheat Institute strategic programme. As most people have done, we've done a lot of work around clarifying career progression, the criteria that's needed, and making sure that people are aware of what's needed and have access to the documentation. So this is all available on our intranet site. We've brought many of the leadership and management programs to John Innes. This EMBO program is well respected, and up until, I don't know, about 5 years ago or so, people would have to go to, I think it was Heidelberg, to actually take part in it. We've brought that to Norwich now, which makes it more accessible for those with caring responsibilities. And that's gone down really well, and we've expanded it to include the postdocs and the group leaders now. Before, I think it was mainly group leaders. We, as most people do, take into consideration career breaks and interruptions, and the current situation with COVID, we'll be looking to make sure that in all our recruitment and promotions and any career progression decisions, that the impact of this shutdown period is taken into consideration. We're also a signatory of the San Francisco Declaration of Research Assessment, or DORA, as we refer to it. And for those of you who don't know what this is, it's basically a commitment to say that you will not use metrics like journal impact factors as a proxy for scientific excellence. And actually it's the science content that matters. And you will use other things like more holistic things. So obviously there'll be papers and grants, but also things like citizenship and mentorship, and what are you doing for the institute, those types of things. Another big project, which I've put this slide in particularly because of the audience today, is around the technicians' commitment, and Claire Stevenson is the lead for that, as I said earlier. So this slide here just shows you how we are addressing the 4 criteria that are listed for the technicians' commitment. I've already spoken to you about the voice committees, and say they underpin the work that we do at JIC in terms of EDI. And we also have a protocol around authorship on publications. It's very common, if not the norm, at JIC for technical staff to be included on publications. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of that. You can read it. So I'm just going to focus now on one particular area that we've had problems with, and that is, and it still is, our biggest challenge, and that is attracting group leader applications from women. So you may have seen that the UKRI have released their diversity data this week or last week, I think it was. And if you look at that data, you'll see that what they've noticed is that the gender balance of people applying for the more junior positions is really good, but it's the senior positions that's difficult, and we found the same. I don't quite know why that is, but anyway. So what we've tried to do to get over this is we make sure that the adverts don't put people off, so we review the wording of our adverts. We've introduced a scheme from York University where we will challenge single gender shortlists. I don't think we've ever come up with a single gender shortlist, but the plan would be to, if we ever did, and we would take the bottom of that single gender shortlist and compare that person with the top of the other gender shortlist and decide whether actually we've got it right. And take another look at the shortlist. Our appointments and search committees are gender balanced. We run a variety of mechanisms to attract people to JIC, from the annual Independent Fellows Day, which I think I spoke about earlier. So this is the day where we get people who want to apply for a 5-year fellowship, like the UKRI Future Leader Fellowships, the David Philip Fellowships, or the Royal Society Fellowships, that type of fellowship. And they will come and talk at JIC. And then if they get selected, then they're mentored through the whole process. So that'll be, building up their proposal, getting good feedback on that, and then being put through a mock interview. And then if they win the fellowship, they come to JIC, then that's a route into our tenure track process. They would undergo a review 2 years into that fellowship, and then if everything's all well and good, which it is usually, then they will get transferred to the tenure track system. And then in addition to that, there are some other things, like we run a series of mini symposia. We get group leaders to keep an eye out for future recruits, and we'll invite them to come and give talks so that they can see us and we can see them. So the impact of all that has been that over the between 2013 and 2018, we've attracted 16 new recruits to JIC at group leader level, and 50% of those have been women, and they have tended to be more junior than rather than senior. It's quite hard for us to attract mid-career and more established group leaders at the moment. We're currently finishing off a round of recruitment, and we've just recruited another individual, another woman, and there are 2 more in the pipeline, not 2 more women, but 2 more offers out there at the moment. So another way of trying to attract people is to make sure that people are visible. So we do try to put people forward for awards, and these awards range from it might be a civic award through to a scientific award, and it goes across the whole piece. So we've got technical support staff within the research and support staff within these women here, as well as group leaders. And we're also a prestigious research institute and have 8 fellows of the Royal Society, and I would think we're unique in that 50% of those are women. So that's at one end of the spectrum. Of course, the other end of the spectrum is the raising aspirations, and I'm not going to go through all of these initiatives here. I'm going to talk mainly about the ones that Sam Fox, who has now left us, she was our youth aspirations champion. I'm going to talk about the ones that she set up, and the Women of the Future was a classic, and this was set up to address the fact that the aspirations within schoolgirls was pretty low, particularly in Norfolk, and science was not something they were really thinking about considering. So the whole purpose of this event is to invite girls, year 10 girls from socially economic deprived areas, so from the schools in those areas, to come to John Innes and hear from a range of external speakers, all women who are scientists, and give them a feel for the opportunities that there are with a scientific degree. So that event was only focused on girls, and now what they're doing is it's been expanded to this thing called a Youth STEM Award, which is a national available scheme. So if you're interested, let me know and I can put you in contact with Sam. And this is a bit like the Duke of Edinburgh Award, and it's an opportunity for school children to be able to document their activity in STEM. And they'll get a bronze, silver or gold award, and there are different criteria that you have to work to. And that has been really, really successful. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to some beacon activity associated with the technician's commitment. So I think I'm probably talking to the converted here, and you were all involved in this Research Institute Technicians Symposium last year, which was a collaborative project with Sanger, Crick, ICR, Abraham and MRC. We ran an internal competition or internal selection procedure to identify somebody who would talk on behalf of JIC. And Sophie Abel, who you can see here, she was the one who was selected, and she works in our horticultural services department. And she wouldn't normally get the opportunity to do something like this, so it was a real confidence boost for her. And as I said before, Claire is the driver of this, of the technician's commitment at JIC, and she set up the Research Institute Technician LinkedIn group. And she also did this short video on how the JIC has become COVID secure to help other people who were thinking about how they were going to unwind. And then last year, Claire, who's looking very glamorous here, was nominated for one of the Times Higher Education Awards as Technician of the Year. And then following on from this, we've been collaborating with Liverpool and Nottingham, and we're involved in this EDI report of the technician community, and identified that, you know, the problems that happen in academia are also happening in this particular population. So there's an underrepresentation of women in leadership roles, underrepresentation of BAME people, and disabled people. So there are some recommendations that came out of this to try and improve on this and improve on the EDI aspects of the technician's commitment. And one of the schemes that we've joined, which has been driven by the University of Nottingham, and it's an EPSRC funded scheme, is this thing called STEM Change. So there's the Change Maker Placement Programme. And this has been built specifically for technical colleagues from underrepresented and minority groups. And it's an opportunity to shadow somebody at another organisation and learn about a different career path. Different career paths within the technical community. So there were 30 placements. I think the closing date for those placements has closed now, has passed now, and the people have been selected. I'm not quite sure where we are with it, because I think it's been impacted obviously by the current situation. But I do know that JIC will be hosting 2 placements, and we have 3 of our technical staff going on placements elsewhere. And I think the plan is, at the end, those people who've been involved in those 30 placements will take part in a conference at the Institute of Physics, and then there'll be a report written on the impact. And I guess the plan would be to hope to get additional funding and run it another year. So I'm just talk very briefly about some other beacon activity that's been going on. This is focused around Athena SWAN. So just to say that, you know, we're not just restricted to the UK. There's been activity across the globe, I suppose you could say. I did a tour of Australia a couple of years ago now, spoke at the SAGE conference. So SAGE is is the Athena SWAN version, the Australian Athena SWAN version. And Dale, our director, has done a few women in STEM conferences in China. We have a partnership with Chinese Academy of Science over there. So beacon activity is not just about sharing best practice, or should I say sharing best practices is actually a two-way thing. So we've learned things from others and adopted them. So thank you, Sanger. This is something that we've taken from you, and that is your peer-to-peer thank you scheme. We're just about ready to launch that now. We had an internal competition where, or internal request for people to put in drawings that we could use for the cards, and this here is one of them. And also your electronic anonymous suggestion box. We've also adopted that as well, and that's working very well. When I was in Australia, I saw this great poster at CSIRO about a guide to inclusive meetings, and we've adapted that for JIC, and that's been advertised quite widely. And then at the Rosling Institute, they had a really great booklet which brought together all of their activity and support related to parents and carers. And that's something that I've really wanted at JIC for a long time, and we finally got that together. And again, our parent and carer group took that on board, and it's been really useful for, particularly for our new starters. And then with recruitment, we've adopted a couple of York activities, and one of those I've already spoken about, which was about challenging single gender shortlists. We've also, our last round of recruitment, we decided that, probably against all E&DI best practice that you hear, to actually shortlist the women separately and the men separately, and then to look at those two shortlists and come up with the final shortlist. And when we did that, we ended up with a shortlist of 6, of which 4 women and 2 were men. So I'm not sure whether that's just a coincidence, whether we had maybe a better standard come through for the women, because the previous round it had been really quite poor. So I'm almost there. I just want to talk about, very briefly, about what I think the impact has been. So I think it gave us the opportunity to self-reflect. We've implemented a lot of initiatives. We've increased transparency throughout JIC, so people are aware of what's going on. We've got really good engagement now. We've just run our survey, and that's the results have just come out. And we've got a staff engagement index now of 91%, which is up from 79% in 2005. And the words that you hear, that you see on this slide, are the words that are used most frequently to describe JIC. We ask people to write the 3 words that we use to describe JIC. And the fact that it's come out as friendly, inclusive, diverse, supportive is really great. But more importantly for me, what I like the most is that the interventions now are coming from the grassroots. I always feel that once that starts happening, that's when you know things are truly becoming embedded, because people are confident to put things forward knowing that things will be acted on. So where are we going? Well, there's still a lot to do. So we're looking at ways now to ensure that COVID impacts as little as possible on staff and student careers. I mean, you probably have all seen a graph like the one I'm showing here, which shows a rapid decrease in the number of publications accepted from women. And I'm sure this will be because they're not being submitted, having to juggle homeschooling and working from home. You've seen that our ethnic diversity is really poor, so that's something that we're going to be working on. And we need to attract a more diverse set of applicants to the group leader positions. We're in the process of developing our a formal alumni strategy. And then the thing that we have to do all the time is trying to keep awareness high. We have such a high turnover of staff because we have 100 students who are with us for 4 years, and then we have 150 odd postdocs who are with us for 3 years. So there's this constant churn of people. And so you think everybody knows what's happening, then all of a sudden half the population doesn't. So although there's still a lot to do, we have come a long way. And I just wanted to show you this. So this is from a newsletter in 1973 about our recreation centre. So the section I want to just read to you is this. It says, the trustees will be appointing a man to work for some evenings as a barman and as an additional security guard for the institute. It's also hoped that eventually a woman will be employed to prepare sandwiches and snacks at lunchtimes. So we've moved a very long way from there. So to finish, I just want to emphasise that this is a team effort. All of these people at one time or another have been on the Inclusivity and Diversity Committee or have been involved in advising. We take into consideration what we hear through the voices, and more importantly, what I want to say is that our director is absolutely behind this agenda. And without that commitment from him and our strategy committee, a lot of the work we do would be so much slower and so much harder. So with that, I hope everybody's still there. I'm going to finish.
Thank you very much, Carole. We are absolutely here, 39 of us at the moment.
It's quite disconcerting when you can't see anybody.
I totally agree. I see some claps from Sayar. As I mentioned, please send your questions to Carole. I would like to thank you, Carole, for your fantastic talk. and sharing your experience on both on EDI and technician commitment, of course, as John Innes Center. And I think there are lots of inspiring initiatives I heard, and one of them is STEM Change, for example, that John is part of. So all of those initiatives are quite inspiring. So while we are waiting for any possible questions, I would like to ask a few of my from my side. And as you know, I'm a technician commitment manager at the Sanger Institute. So at Sanger Institute, we are actually not including only technicians, or we are extending and following an inclusive approach. So we are calling technicians and technical experts or technical staff in total, because we are including also informatics and IT departments in our definition. So I was wondering, how does it work in John Innes? Who do you call technical staff at John Innes?
So they're a very broad church, if you like. So they include people like our lab technicians who make the media. They include people like our horticultural staff who grow the plants, people who run our technology platforms, people like myself, so our admin support. And then we have, the way that we're set up is that our group leaders have what we call a 1+1, so that would be a research assistant usually, and that person would be responsible for running their lab for them, for mentoring their students, making sure the students and the postdocs are happy, and making sure the projects are running well. So we would include those as well. So I suppose what you could say is that it would be everybody other than our postdoc students and our research or group leaders. One thing that you may not know is that the way that we're organised, our finance, HR, facilities, all those sorts of people sit in another organisation, and we buy that service. So we don't have financial people. So the other people who are included are people like our people in comms and engagement, people in KC and commercialisation, and in the international office. So as I say, it's a very wide range.
Then another question on Athena SWAN applications, which was always on my mind. As you know, Sanger Institute has the silver status, and as you mentioned, John Innes has the gold for a while already, the first independent organization. So what makes the institute eligible for this award? So what is silver compared to gold?
So, well, if we go back one step, bronze is about recognising where your issues are and putting initiatives in place. Silver is about showing the impact of those initiatives. And then gold is about showing continued impact, but also demonstrating that they're becoming embedded, and also demonstrating beacon activity where you're sharing best practice with other organisations. So it's like identify your problem, show the impact, tell everybody about it, type of thing. Share your experience.
Thank you.
That's what it'd be. And then just thinking about ethnicity. So I was in contact with Advanced HE recently to find out whether the research institutes are eligible for the race charter. They're not actually at the moment, but they are. The reason I'm saying this is because I know that they are thinking about running a pilot, so they'll probably be looking for people who are interested in joining that.
I don't see any other. Oh, I see from Claire actually a question. Champion in the institute, so I know Claire very well, and we had even I came to John Innes to give a talk about Sanger's progress at certain time, and then we talked together with Claire. So the question from Claire is, with Athena SWAN, if you could go back and do it again, would you do things differently? A great question.
No, I haven't been set up for this. She hasn't told me about this question. Would I do it differently? I don't think I would, actually. I think I hope that the approach that I take, and the approach I try to take, is to be as inclusive as possible and to listen to what people are saying, because I'm not very keen on imposing initiatives on people. With having a scientific background, I like to see the evidence as to why we need the initiative that we're going to put in place, and if there is no evidence for the need for it, then we don't do it. So I'm not very keen on doing things for the sake of it. And I think what we tried to do is be as consultative as possible. And what I would have liked to have happened differently is to have had more engagement for our silver, because I used to hear all the time, oh, well, this isn't for me, this is about women, you know, why am I bothered? I'm not really bothered about that. But it soon became apparent that many of the things that we put in place for Athena SWAN contributed towards making people feel more included in general. And then there was this subtle switch, I would say, between going from silver to gold, in that people were beginning to come to me with initiatives rather than me thinking, well, you know, what do we need type of thing, what can we do to address this? And I always think that if people are experiencing the problems, they're the ones who are better to come up with the solutions. So that was really what I found really great about gold. And also, you know, we took the attitude, or I took the attitude, that I wasn't going to go around asking people to do stuff for Athena SWAN. It's more about capturing what they were already doing, because the Institute is very much a bottom-up institute, so we're not very good at collecting all the activity that's going on. So I literally had to go around a lot of people and say, what are you doing that we could use, rather than saying, right, I need somebody to go and, I don't know, go and talk to some school kids about careers in science, you know, that type of stuff. So it's about, so the advice I would give to anybody is take a really good look at your organisation and understand exactly what's going on. You'll see that people are doing things that they haven't boxed into that box and said, oh, well, I could use this for Athena SWAN. And yet when you talk to them about it, you can see how it can be used to evidence the culture at the Institute.
Thank you very much. Great question and a great answer, I think, because as technician commitment manager on the new post for now 8 months, I'm also trying to see, reflecting, right? I like that word as well. So what could I have done differently? What we can do in the future better? I have a question from Sarah. Do you have an initiative that you feel particularly proud of, or that was particularly satisfying to achieve?
Yes, that was getting the nursery. So I struggled through with childcare when my kids were small. I mean, we were very lucky in the end to get a childminder who would take all 3 of them. But it just seemed such a glaring omission not to have an on-site nursery. And I tried all sorts of ways to get that to happen. And then, as I say, eventually we decided we'd try and put together a business case for somebody else to make it happen, but just make it as easy as possible for them. So having the nursery on site was, for me, if I'm going to be remembered for anything, I'd like it to be that, the nursery. I would love to have had one of those when my kids were little.
Thank you very much, Carole. I think these are all the questions we have, and now we are over 3 o'clock. I would like to thank everyone, and specifically to Carole for her talk. Thank you very much. It was fantastic.
Thank you for having me.